Remember to smile because there are cameras everywhere. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Understanding Movies, the American Cinema for winter of 2014. This is the orientation session. This is when we're going to talk about everything that you need to know about the course, and so we'll jump right into it. And the first thing you want to know is, who am I? Okay. My name is Lucanio, as you can see there, and my office is in Building 17, but they changed me. So I'm no longer in that other room. I'm actually across the hall, as it were. I'm actually, and I don't know what the room number is. So on the syllabus, it says I'm in 214, I think, or 210. And so if you go in there, if you need to see me, it's right around the corner, and you'll see 210. Instead of going in there, you go all the way across the room, and I'll be in there as soon as I find out what the room number is. They told me, he says, we've moved you, everything's fine, you know, you're ready to go, and then I'm leaving, and after I did all this, and I'm leaving, and then I go, oh, what number is it? Well, I don't know, but it's up there. So anyway, my office hours are Tuesdays. I'm only on campus one day a week. It's Tuesday, 9:30 to 10:30. If you need to see me, we can make an appointment as well if you can't make it at that time, at that hour. But we always work out something if you need to see me, something about me. I have spent my career teaching and studying and researching and writing about 1950s science fiction movies. I've written a few books there, like Them or Us, Smoking Rockets, American science fiction television series. I was also a talking head in a movie that was made a few years back called Monsters from the Id. There's the website for that. Yeah, it's kind of, you know, just fizzled out and disappeared into nowhere land. But it was fun doing it, and the filmmaker, the guy that made it back in New York, was very happy with the movie, and we were very, well, I won't say we were very successful with regard to money, but other than that, it's available probably somewhere. Also, recently, I wrote the articles for these two books that came out, science fiction theater essays for them, and 1950s rocket men, all about those young kids that joined the rocket groups and became members of the secret squadron and those kinds of things. It was a fun book, and the book has done rather well. Too bad I don't have a monetary interest in it. Every time I do something for free, it's success. Every time I need some money, well, forget it. All right. I also edit a monthly magazine called Radiogram, which is all about old-time radio, which is about radio drama. I do it through an organization in Los Angeles known as SPURDVAC, which actually stands for the Society to Preserve and Encourage Radio Variety Comedy, Drama, whatever it is, drama, variety, and comedy. And it's fun because that's something that I've studied for a long time as well. On the creative side, that is drama that is heard. And that's all. I'm kind of from two different worlds here, as you can see. On the one hand, I'm a big film guy, and that's where my loyalty lies in dealing with film, but at the same, which is visual, and which is where I begin with it. And then on the other side, my favorite activity is to listen to drama that is not visual, but instead is very suggestive and causes visualization for things. And being part of that, I'm also part of, you probably heard this, Fred Kraft's local Radio Redux organization. I'm a part of his group, and I lecture about this, and so our radio show coming up in February is called Radio Days. 3, this is the third version of it. It's There's Love in the Air, which is a romance, since it's happening about Valentine's Day. And we take 3 of the Golden Age radio shows One of them will be The Inner Sanctum Mystery. It's about a woman who is married to a vampire. And we reproduce those the way they were done back then. As it says, we're radio worth watching. But what I do with it is I lecture. I'll be talking about, of all things, love, which I'm not an expert on that at all. But I am an expert on radio drama, and I will be talking and lecturing about what they did, and the old radio shows and how they dealt with romance. So anyway, that's a plug for that. Actually, it's just telling you what I do and who I am and why I do it. And then the next message is, you know, if you need to see me, or you need to contact me anyway, don't call me. Don't use the telephone. Send an email. For best results, always email. I give you 2 email addresses, and I check both of them throughout the day. So that's the best way I can get in touch with you. If you call me, chances are you're going to call at an off time, because I'm only on campus 1 day a week, and then I'll come back next week, and that'll be a week old. And then I'll try to get in touch with you, and guess what? You're not there. So I leave a message, and then you call back, and guess what? I'm not there. So we're just playing an idiot game. So instead, use modern technology and send an email. Remember that. You will use email. You will use email. You will use email. The book. Okay. I don't know where the book is. I was told that the book is not in the bookstore. Now, if that's true, I'll have to remedy that, and how I'll do it, I'm not sure, but I will try to do that. But I will be in touch with you via email. I'll send a shotgun email with regard to the book, and whether or not the book is actually going to be in the bookstore, or whether it has disappeared, it has been stolen, it has been vaporized, or whatever. I don't know, but we'll get to that. But that's the name of the book. It's American Cinema, American Culture, and I don't care which version of the book you get. That is the edition. You don't need the latest, most up-to-date edition of the book. If you find an old, beat-up copy of the very first edition, it's going to work for you, because it was written to correspond to the videos that you will be seeing. And those programs are close to 15 years old. The only difference in updated versions of the book is that they will talk about current films, stuff that you're very current on anyway, stuff that you would recognize. So that's really the only difference. The substance of the book, the substance of understanding movies has not changed in those 15 years. So the details with regard to our subject, those remain the same throughout all editions of the book. All right, so what is this course all about? What is it? Well, it's an introductory course that brings Hollywood filmmaking into clear focus as, first, an art form. Everybody that walked through that door tonight, and everybody that's listening to this, since you're college students, will default immediately to that. And you will say that, well, movies, of course, they're art. You know, they're not entertainment, they're art. Okay, so it's an art form. Yes, it is. It's also an economic force. And what I have taught film studies for, I don't know, 30 years, and what I have told every class I've ever had with regard to filmmaking is this, that Hollywood filmmaking is a business first. They don't give a rip about art. They're a business first. A movie is made with the idea that it's going to bring in money, and even further than that, that's going to bring in lots of money. Okay, now after saying that, I've got the entire art crowd throwing tomatoes at me. That's not to say that by doing that, it does not cancel out making art. You can still create some very interesting films that we talk about, and films that will be talked about for a long time, even though it made a few bucks. So yes, it is, but the force behind it is money. That's what drives Hollywood, and that's what we're talking about. A European film back in the older days, you know, European was usually subsidized by taxpayers, so they didn't care if they made any money or not. But a Hollywood film, being totally and 100% independent, began, you know, it made films in order to make money. That's why we have, which we'll see in a few moments, why we have that magic word known as genre. Make one type of film and it becomes very successful, and everybody else in the world makes a similar film. And the third point here, this is more a rhetorical, that is a question with regard to rhetoric and not the rhetorical in the normal sense of the word question. It's a system of representation and communication. It does represent values of the culture that it's in, and it also communicates those values to people. So we can't throw that part out either. So essentially, it brings Hollywood filmmaking into focus as an art form, as an economic force, and as a system of representation and communication. The American cinema probes the deeper meanings of American movies through hidden messages of genres. I hate that term, hidden message, because they're not really that hidden. They're pretty obvious. And when we start talking about hidden messages, it's always that idea that you see this movie and you think the movie is just simply a Western, that's all, until some egghead college professor screens it for you and then during the lecture tells you that it has really nothing to do with the Wild West, and it has everything to do with the plight of the underprivileged, in which you're going, huh? I thought it was a Western. Well, it was, but it also had some meaning behind it. Social and psychological effects of style. The style of the film, the style has changed. All you have to do is go back and look at a classic Hollywood film, and you will notice, if you really want to study film, if you go back and look at a classic Hollywood film, say one that was made in 1943, and you look at it with a very critical eye, not with your subjective eye, but again by looking at it and say, what is this film all about and how is it made and all of that, you will notice that there are many long takes. You'll see long takes where actors are interacting. You bring that up to today, especially with that vulgar thing known as television, and what you will see is some very rapid cutting. They're not long takes. They're cutting constantly. And not only that, but in television, they have this wonderful thing of handheld cameras that want everything to move around like this. Because that, when we're talking about the social and psychological effects of style, supposedly brings you into the picture. All it does to me is make me sick. It doesn't bring me into anything. But that's the psychological effect, you see, that they want of that. It's the old idea of the subjective camera angle for all you filmmakers. When they loved that, by the way. They loved that everybody became the murderer in those mad slasher movies because of subjective angle. It's always got the poor woman walking around somewhere out in the woods, and then you cut to this camera moving around like this because it puts you into the picture, and so you become a murderer. Okay, and the mutual influence of society and popular culture. That is the third point there, which is essentially this. Does a movie cause you to go out and commit murder? Or does it just reinforce the idea that we're all murderers? You know, the only answer to that question is yes, because movies do have an effect on it. I just read this report the other day. I didn't get all the way through it, but I just read this. Another study was done, and it found out that movies influence behavior more so than any other medium. They were still pointing that it was movies that influenced your behavior, not so much the villain that everybody thought it would be, video games, and those kinds of things. It was still movies. And that has kind of been that way ever since, the old story, I forget what it is, it's an apocryphal story, but in that movie that Frank Capra made, where he hitchhikes with Claudette Colbert. Anyway, he took his shirt off. Clark Gable took his shirt off, and he had an undershirt on. And it said, supposedly, that the sale of undershirts skyrocketed after that movie. Okay, who knows? All right, we move on. The schedule works this way. Each week, a 60-minute lesson will be broadcast on Comcast 23 and Charter 9, or, as you see on your syllabus, it is available under that line there, online at any time. You can go to the Annenberg site, and you can watch all of those movies all at the same time if you want to, or wait till the last minute and watch them all at that time. I don't know. It's however it works for you. And the next time I talk to you will be to review for the midterm, which is February 3rd in this room, 6 to 6:30, just like we're doing tonight. You don't have to be here. Now, I hate to say that because I like to see you. I hate to be in this big room all by myself looking at that camera back there. I do like to look at people's faces, even those who are sending daggers to me. At least there's an audience. But you don't have to be here. So you can watch the review session on being broadcast live on the cable system, or it is being streamed online, so you can watch it on that, and the address is there in the syllabus. And you can also, wait till I send you an email the following day usually, which will tell you where it is on YouTube and being rebroadcast. All right, then you will take a midterm exam, and the midterm exam is February 6th through February 13th in the testing lab, and I'll talk about that in a moment. It will run for 1 week only. So that is, you have a week to do the test. So it starts on February 6th and will finish up on the 13th. Then I will see you again on the final review, which is March 10th, again in this room, and broadcast live. And then the final exam is during final exams week, but it starts actually the Thursday before that in the testing lab again. So that's March 13th through March 20th in the testing lab. And it, again, 1 week only. So what do we do? What do we do for this course? Well, these are the course requirements. Obviously, watch the video programs, because that's where you're going to get the majority of your information about what you need to know on the exam is coming from those video programs. Again, you can watch it at your convenience by going to the Annenberg site. That address is in your syllabus. You don't have to write that big long thing down there. But that's the video programs are like lectures. I mean, that's essentially where you're getting your information. They are documentary in style, so it's not like somebody is standing up talking to you about this stuff. It's not a recorded lecture by a professor. They are documentaries about each of those subjects that we'll talk about in a moment. Then you will read appropriate sections of the text, if there is one. If there isn't one, well, we do a real quick song and dance, and I'll try to figure out something else. But you also will read the appropriate sections of the text. As you see, they're in boldface in the syllabus there under that schedule. Take notes of the films or the video presentations, because essentially, unless you've got a perfect memory and unless you have this perfect method of attention there, you can remember everything. You're going to need some notes, so that's just advice. And then you will take 2 exams. That's it for the course. You will take a midterm exam, as I mentioned, and then you will take a final exam. That's all that is required. Okay, you don't have to do anything per week. You don't have to turn in a paper per week. You don't have to turn in notes per week. I don't want to do all that stuff. I don't do that kind of high school stuff. I leave it up to you. This is a very intensive course. It's also a difficult course, and it really requires someone who is self-disciplined, because it's very easy not to do any of this stuff. It's very easy just to sit back and say, I'll get around to it. But it behooves you to pay close attention, to get a schedule going, take notes if you have to, and then you will take 2 exams, a midterm and a final. The final, and both the midterm and the final, will involve 50 questions of multiple choice. So you don't have to do any writing. You just have to have knowledge. Knowledge, sort of like taking the, I don't know, some kind of a doctor's exam or something, so you can understand the difference between a paramecium and I don't know, an amoeba, I don't know. But you'll understand, you know, the notions. And let me also add that a lot of the questions are not just nuts and bolts questions. They are theoretical questions where you have to stop and think for a moment. Okay, I mentioned earlier about the social science testing lab. That's where they are conducted. You have to be there to take the exam. I do not have the capability of putting this online. I can't do that. Everything else is online except the exams. To take those, you go to the social science lab. That's the center building, 456. Photo ID is required, so make sure and have some photo ID required. Your notes, oh yes, and I forgot to mention that. Yes, you can have a note card with you. So when it's time for the exam, well, I'm going to come to that. Let me just put these things, finish this. The one thing that you need to do is, even though I give you a week to do the exam, we all are at the mercy of their hours of operation. So you'll have to be very familiar with their schedule, because I don't want you to go in there, especially on the last day of the exam, and you find out that they close at 5 o'clock and you walk in at 5 minutes to 5. That's your problem, not mine. So you just make sure and know the schedule of their hours over there. And let's see. Okay, the 3x5 card is for reference. Okay, what this means is this. You're watching all of these videos, and you're getting all this information, and you say, boy, I know that. This stuff is cool. I like it. This is good stuff. But you know, I cannot remember what aspect ratio is all about. I just can't remember that. And he probably will ask me something about aspect ratio. So what do? You put the information on a cheat sheet. You put the information on a card, and you can take it with you into the testing lab. But you're only allowed one 3x5 card. That's their policy. So you can only bring in one 3x5 card. But if you've got it filled up front and back, I don't care. But you take it in with you, and that's all I'm saying is, the stuff you know, don't sweat it. Don't worry about it. But the stuff that creates confusion, you know, put that on your note card. You are responsible for that exam, not me. So you make sure and check their hours of operation. Also, during the time of midterm and final, I will put up on Moodle, and that's all I'll put up on Moodle, is a study guide. And the study guide will give you the stuff you need to know all about what's going to be on the exam. So it's not going to be a total shot in the dark when you go in there. I will tell you, this is the stuff that we have done up to this point, and this is the stuff that a film scholar, someone who's going to leave a class and say, I know all about movies, would know. Okay, so you can go through the study guide, and you can take a look at it and say, I know it all. I know everything that's on that study guide. Then you can sleep well that night. Or, like a student I had last quarter, you can look at that study guide and have no idea what's going on. None whatsoever. And then wanted to know why he got an F. And I wasn't quite sure how to explain that to him, but he didn't know a thing. Not a thing. Okay, I also allow extra credit. The reason I allow extra credit is two. One, insurance for you in case you do bomb the midterm, and it will help you to get that grade up to what it should be. And number two, I often like to see what students can do on their own. And so if you say, you know, my favorite movie of all time, the greatest movie ever made of all time was The Phantom of the Opera with Lon Chaney, and that's all I want to do is talk about it, then I say, okay, write me a paper about it. Tell me something about it. And you get the extra credit. Or, because that's the two options, the other option is, if you're inclined, produce your own narrative or documentary production. Produce your own movie. Show me what you know. But it has to go by the limits that are in the syllabus. That is, I can't watch a feature-length movie. So there are time limits on it. But go for it. Details about all of that stuff are in the deluxe syllabus available on Moodle for download. I sound like a commercial. Okay? If you don't have a syllabus, you can get one off of Moodle. If you're confused, bewildered, rattled, depressed, and desperate, so am I. So we're in the same boat. But stop by during office hours or send an email, and I'll try to explain everything. And the program schedule. The program schedule, I've got 2 minutes to get through it. And I'm going to tell you that this is all we're going to do. We're going to take the classic Hollywood style. They're going to talk about that. The first program, and it's not classic, does not mean old. Pay attention to that. It is a style, a classic style. All right? And then they move into the studio system. It's that system that created stars. It was the system that created genre. It is a system that created the movies as we know them. The star, where they came from. In the beginning, there were no titles, there were no credits. In the beginning, movies had a title. That's all it was. You went in, you saw the movie called Train Robbery, and that's it. And then people began to say, you know, I like that person that's in that. I saw that person. They were in this other movie, and they were doing pretty much the same kind of role. And that feedback went back to the studios, and so they began to say, they want to see more movies with you. And so you create the star. Then we go into the genre, and the first one is the ultimate of all Hollywood genres, the Western. They'll talk about what that is all about. Then they go into the romantic comedy. Then they'll move into the combat film. Everybody else calls them war movies. They like to say combat film. Then they go into everybody's favorite film noir, the dark, private eye movies that originated in the 1940s. Then they move into this thing called film in the television age, because what happened to movies when television took over? You know, what was it that killed the movies? Was it television or attendance? And you'll be surprised when you get to find out it wasn't just television in the 1950s that did them in. One of the things that did them in was, believe it or not, bowling. The film school generation, that's all your Francis Ford Coppolas, your George Lucases. These are people who didn't come from other areas, like many of the great filmmakers came from Broadway or came from writing. They came from that kind of drama. No, this time you actually go to school and learn to be a filmmaker. And the edge of Hollywood, that is where we're at now. Okay, there's my 2 email addresses. They're also in the syllabus. And remember to check the office hours of the testing lab. The end. Are there any questions for the good of the order at this point?